Of course, all of us, we are all aware that COVID-19 has been a big disruptor. This is something which the whole world has not seen for last 100 years. The last time the whole world saw this pandemic like this was sometime around 1918 to 1920, when the Spanish flu affected the world. And maybe after that, the biggest disruptor was probably the Second World War. But the world has not seen a disruption of this scale. And education system has not been something which has been left out of the impact of COVID. But there are two ways of looking at the impact. One is, of course, the negative disruption which it has caused in the last toward the end of the last academic year or the beginning of next academic year, and the disruption which we are seeing in terms of exams and uncertainty relating to it. But there is also a positive side to it, that this pandemic has brought in, I would say, a transformation, or bringing in a transformation at a speed and at a rate at which we have not seen before. In fact, I can be confidently saying this, that change which we would have seen in the education sector in probably next 1 decade or 5 to 10 years, that type of change we are seeing in these few months. So almost it has dramatically accelerated the change in the education process. Always we were talking about that somehow our education system has been slow to adopt technology. I mean, most other sectors, if you really look at it, have been deeply touched by technology, but somehow education sector was something which was not being able to adopt technology at a rapid scale. But I think COVID-19 has done that, which is bring in technology at a rate, at a speed which we could not even think of. And I think it's a great time now to really look at the future of education and higher education per se. So I'm happy that the topic of this seminar or this webinar and FPP is also sustainability of higher education institutions in the context of COVID-19. And since we are talking about sustainability, we have to really look at what are our strengths which are going to help us in the future, and what are our opportunities which we can make use of. And if you really look at the world around us, or in our country or globally, already we are seeing online degrees coming in. I mean, there are many universities in US who are now providing completely online degrees. And even in our country also, there are many universities who have already started offering online degrees. UGC is now permitting the universities which are in the top 100 of the National Institutional Ranking Framework, and those who are above 3 NAAC score, to offer online degrees. And we keep seeing some ads in the national newspapers or magazines also by some of the leading universities in the country offering online degrees. Now, question which arises is that if a student can access a program completely online, why should he or she come to a campus to have a degree? And this is the answer, this is the question, I think, the answer to which would really provide us how can we make the higher education institutions more sustainable. And I feel the answer lies that you can get the content what you want for a particular course or whatever certificate program or a degree program you're doing, or somebody is planning to do through an online program. That content is available, but I think what is missing in an online program compared to a campus program is basically two things. One is the interaction which one can have with the fellow students. So it's kind of a peer-to-peer learning which takes place in a campus environment is completely missing, or to great extent missing on an online program. And two is this, which is again the real strength, is this face-to-face interaction with the faculty. So these are the two real things which differentiate a campus program from an online program. And these are the two strengths of ours. I mean, if these two strengths we don't utilize, then a person can obtain the same degree with the same nomenclature and probably with the same validity in the future completely online. I mean, a person does not need to come to the campus. So why should a student come to the campus is because of these two reasons. One is the face-to-face interaction which one gets with the faculty, and two is the peer-to-peer interaction which a student gets with the fellow students. And I think we need to really focus on these two issues. And the way to do that is that in the future, our campuses and the method of teaching in our campuses also has to kind of transform. For too long, we have been able to get away with only providing the basic Blackboard content to the students. I mean, when the student come to the class, we basically provide them simple content on the background. I'm not saying that everybody does it, but I'm just talking in terms of a general thing what happens. So most of our class is about content. Today, that content is available to the students either online or on the internet or through the multiple sources which are there. And student is not coming to the classroom for that content. Student is coming to the classroom for this enriching discussion which can take place. So, for example, I will tell you one of the interesting things which a former director of IIT Hyderabad, Professor U.B. Desai, who's now joined as the Chancellor of Anurag University, the newly formed private university. So we had invited him last year for our Jigyasa program, and he was chief guest for one of our programs. And then during his talk, he said a very interesting thing. He said that most of my class is about students asking questions on a particular topic. I mean, in IIT, students are expected to read the material before they come to the class. So I have also been part of an IIT system, or even in, if you look at in the other leading institutions in the country like IIMS or the other leading institutions, students actually do the reading work before they come to the class. So, so what he was saying is that his lecture is more about students asking questions. And on average, every lecture, student asks, let's say, 10 questions. Now, he may not be having answer to all those 10 questions, because you don't expect every professor or every lecturer to have answer to everything what the students ask. So he said that on an average, he's able to answer, let's say, 7 out of 10 questions. And the other 3, he frankly tells to the students that, look, I need to do a little more brushing up, a little more homework on this, and he will take up those questions in the next class. And he says that becomes a topic for his own learning or his own study into that topic. And then in the next class, he's able to answer those questions in a proper way, and discussion takes place. So I'm just giving an example of something which a director of, or a former director of one of the IITs told in one of our Jigyasa program. And I think classrooms have to slowly transform into more of forums for discussion, forums for analysis, forums for asking questions, and forums for analysis, rather than simply providing one-way content from the teacher or the lecturer to the students. And that is our real strength. And if we can harness that real strength as much as possible, I think there's no reason why our higher education institutions will not be sustainable. They will be, because that's our real differentiating point. And the second thing which I was mentioning was this peer-to-peer interaction. So we have to consciously create more and more forums for students to collaborate and do things together. For example, in the Department of Collegiate Education in Telangana, because some of the participants are from other parts of the country, we have a very interesting program which I was just mentioning when I was talking about the first point. This program is called Jigyasa. And Jigyasa is basically more of a kind of a quest for knowing, basically, curiosity. So it's a very, I think, even the Hindi word is quite similar to the Telugu word which we use. So it's about curiosity. And the way it works is that it is a statewide competition among the government degree colleges. We have got about 125 degree colleges all across the state. And students all across the state participate in various topics, be it arts, be it science, or be it commerce. And groups of 5 to 6 students do this, take up this topic, do some local research, and then they prepare a project around it, and then present it first at the college level, and then at the district level, and then at the state level. And students who come up to the state level, they are also provided prizes, and documentation of their projects is also done. And this program is going on for now about last, I would say, 4 years. And what we have seen is that this program has grown from strength to strength. And the reason for that is that we find that this gives an opportunity for the students, those 5 or 6 students who are part of the group, and with the help of one of the teachers in the colleges, to work on a topic of the common interest and to do some genuinely original work on that particular topic. And through this, they not only learn, but learn in a very, very, I would say, enjoyable manner, and in a manner that a basic, simple classroom lecture would probably not help them to learn. So that's one example of how peer-to-peer learning is one of the strengths of our higher education institutions. And that is something which we really need to encourage. And that is these two put together, this rich interaction with the faculty, which is based on discussion, analysis, questions, answers, and this peer-to-peer interaction. These are our two strengths, which, if we can focus upon, will really, really help our higher education institutions to be very sustainable in the future. Not just in the context of COVID-19, but any disruption which comes in the future, we will be able to handle it. And whatever be the kind of technology disruptions comes, these are the two things which I think will always be the strength of our educational system for a long, long time to come. And Professor Purushottam was talking about hybrid teaching or hybrid learning. And many of the speakers also in last 1 week have spoken about this combination of online and offline teaching. I think this is something which is a real reality, and the sooner we accept it, the better it is. Because, as I mentioned, this helps to combine the strengths of the two medium. One is the content which can be provided to the students through online teaching. For example, if that content is, let's say, through a video lecture or through rich multimedia, the student can actually stop, rewind, forward, repeat. Those controls are at the fingertips of the students. In a class, if student misses something, there's no way he or she can go back. But if one is online and watching a, let's say, video lecture, maybe on whatever device, a desktop in a campus or a laptop or a smartphone, you can actually see a particular thing, repeat, rewind, or until you are really clear about it, until you have imbibed it, you can keep on watching it. So that's the advantage of the online media, that it is available to you on demand. It's very similar to now what is happening in the entertainment world. I mean, with the coming on this of this OTT content, Netflix and Amazon Prime, or you name so many of them, Hotstar, Z5, and so many of them. People have literally stopped watching the TV serials which were telecast from particular time to time, because now you can watch the content which you want at whatever time you feel like. You can see the number of episodes which you want. I mean, flexibility is the key. And we see this huge shift in the whole country, not just in India, but across the globe, for this entertainment to shift from TV to OTT content. Same is the case with online. So if this flexibility is there in the hands of the student, he can really kind of get empowered. But as I said, online is not enough. So it has to be combined with classroom teaching. But that classroom teaching has to be more about analysis, discussion, and students asking questions, faculty answering those questions, doubts, and the rich environment which is there in the classroom to be able to make use of that. And if we can combine these two, that is what we are calling hybrid teaching. That is the best of both online and the physical teaching. If these two things can be combined, this hybrid teaching method is a very, very powerful method, which I think is going to be the reality for very, very long time to come. And I think the sooner we become comfortable with it and the sooner we adopt it, the better it is. Of course, with time, things will evolve, but the idea is that we should all start getting familiar with these mediums as much as possible. And I'm happy that the faculty in Telangana really took up the online teaching in a big way during this crisis. In fact, our statistics show that nearly about 93% of our faculty were up and running online platforms within about 2 or 3 days of we giving instructions or passing a circular to the faculty to take up online classes to finish off the previous year's pending syllabus. So this is one thing, that is teaching and learning per se. Second thing, I think where a real transformation is going to come is in terms of this assessment and evaluation. And Professor Purushottam is there from the university side. I see a huge transformation in this whole assessment and evaluation process in the future. Right now, our assessments is based on a semester exam. We've moved from an annual system to a semester system 4-5 years back in the state of Telangana, and probably few more years extra in other parts of the country. So we moved from an annual system to a semester system, but still most of our assessment evaluation is based on one final exam for a particular subject. Maybe we give, let's say in Telangana, we give 20% credit for internal evaluation and 80% for the final exam. And most of us know how students get this 20% marks, especially in poor quality colleges. And that basically puts, I think, lot of stress on the students to do cram learning or to do rote learning for the purpose of exam. And we've also seen that in many colleges or in many subjects, the focus also shifts from actual learning to performing well in the exam. So the whole learning system is actually more directed towards doing well in the exam and not learning per se. And I expect this to change very, very dramatically when we get more and more of these technology getting in. For example, let's say we have got enough of devices in a particular institution. There is no reason for us to, or there's no need for us to wait for a final exam every lecture or every day or every week or every month, we could actually have an online assessment where a student is basically attempting questions or basically problems completely online in a manner which is, let's say, free from some of the problems which we see in terms of students copying from each other or malpractices which sometimes get indulged in, and it's happening already. For example, a system can be there in which the student is attempting that exam in front of a camera and attempting those answers, and the camera is keeping track of that there is no external help which the student is taking. I mean, it's completely foolproof. Today, it may sound that, oh, it is a little difficult, but I think the way technology is transforming, I see that in a couple of years, we would have completely proctored exams, online proctored exams without a human intervention. And that opens up huge impact into this assessment and evaluation systems. So we really don't need to have these big semester end exams where student is tested only once in a semester and puts unnecessary load on the student at that particular year. I mean, we see when exams are postponed, how much jubilation is there in the student community. And that shows that the examinations are really something which create a lot of fear in the minds of the student. And that should not be the case. If learning has to become interesting and learning has to become important and learning has to become a rich experience, then there's no need to really fear examinations, and there's no real need for universities or higher education institutions to conduct this, I would say, bulk testing at the end of the semester. The whole of the semester could be continuous and concurrent evaluation per se. And we also see a lot of artificial intelligence tools coming in. For example, some of you who have taken some online courses on international platforms like Coursera or edX, you would find that the evaluation need not be done on a human being. In fact, even the maths formulas can be easily calculated by an AI engine, and even a subjective answer can actually be assessed by a machine. In GRE or GMAT, essays are scored completely automatically. We all use smartphones and we use all of these social media platforms. And when we do typing, we see the keyboard in any smartphone will actually tell you where you have made mistakes, spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. It is able to point out. So similarly, now machines can actually evaluate subjective answers also and need not be completely objective. And I think when this power is integrated into these assessment and evaluation systems, we can really have these concurrent and continuous evaluation systems in the future. And that will be something which will really put emphasis on real learning rather than this focus on rote learning or cramming, which actually happens these days for the purpose of the exams. So that's a second big change which I feel is likely to come, which will again really help in improving the sustainability of our higher education system. And third thing which I want to also talk about is that today, it is also important for the faculty also to update themselves on a continuous basis. In the past, we had these faculty development programs or training programs in a physical manner, which were probably happening, let's say, once in a year, once in 2 years, or during, let's say, a period of 4 to 5 years, a faculty had to undergo 2 programs, and that was considered sufficient for the purpose of teaching. But I think future is going to be much more dynamic. The rate of change in various topics and various subjects is so fast that faculty has to continuously update themselves. And I'm happy that our government degree colleges in Telangana have taken up this lead in organizing these FDP programs, and that's the reason why I feel very encouraged to also come and be a part of these programs, either the inauguration or the valedictory time, to be part of these programs. Because I feel that these are the initiatives which really help the faculty. And even at the Government of India level, even before COVID also, there is a lot of change of thinking which is happening. I've been part of many meetings at the Government of India and the UGC level. And the thinking at that level is also that the future training programs are going to be more of these blended programs or hybrid programs rather than completely classroom sessions where faculty has to leave the institution and come to attend these programs for a continuous period of 1 week or 3 weeks or whatever be the duration of those programs, because that really needs a lot of resources in terms of, or most of the resources for those training programs actually go more into these TADAs rather than actual organizing of the program. And the numbers which one is able to target is very limited. For example, at one point to be able to access a program in HRDCs was very difficult because the number of programs are limited, number of slots are limited. But I think in future, we're going to see much larger number of the programs. But the faculty need not restrict themselves to just these sort of FDPs which get organized. But the idea is to also have a flavor of some of these online programs which happen on many of these platforms also. In our state, we have already given a blanket permission to our faculty to do any SWAYAM course at the rate of one course. You can in fact, we encourage our people to do at least one course in a semester. And you can also look at many of these international programs also, like what happens on some of these famous platforms like Coursera or edX. If you participate in some of those courses and you are part of them, you will also see how faculty at an international level teaches. And this is something which I also talked in one of the programs which I attended previously also. That if you look at the way of teaching of some of the international faculty, how they teach, what is it that they emphasize on, how they use the other multimedia techniques, that experience itself becomes a learning for us. Because when we actually participated and when we actually experience how that teaching happens, that's more like a practical experience in learning. And that's a very, I would say, very powerful and an easy method of gaining knowledge and skills in a particular topic which you may be interested in, and you think that this in turn will help the students. So I would end my talk here, but it's my sincere request to all the faculty members that please adopt these new teaching platforms and new teaching techniques, and the knowledge which is changing or which is getting transformed at a very rapid pace. Try to update yourself, because only when you update yourself you will be relevant to the students. And today the students actually see through very quickly. I mean, 15-20 years back, or when we were probably, or all of us were in college, those many opportunities were not available to get knowledge from other sources. But today, students have that access, and they very quickly identify any factual mistakes which we make. So there's no other way but to really keep ourselves updated. And as I mentioned, the strength of our institutions is in terms of this rich faculty to student and student to faculty interaction and student to student interaction. And these are our strengths, and we must build upon them and also adopt technology in a kind of inviting way to help our teaching and to help improve the impact of our teaching.